cyber attacks, and with this deep understanding about how attackers move, how attackers operate, we have a very good understanding about the about the principles and the techniques being used, and that provides a good background and foundation to build around countermeasures. So I will head now over to Nicola to provide us a little bit more background around Kudam Kulam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timo, for this introduction. As you understand, today we have chosen to focus on a specific segment of the energy sector, that of nuclear power, and to illustrate its challenges with a use case, that of the attack on the Indian Kudam Kulam power plant in 2019 using the D-Track malware. Before we talk about the use case itself, let's have a look at the threats to this segment. As daily observer, in fact, of this cyber threat, Thales CTI is constantly and daily monitoring attacks to explain them, of course, and to offer anticipation and reaction solutions in case of incidents. Attacks on the nuclear segments are rather rare in this respect. Nevertheless, since the beginning of the 2000s, we've seen a steady increase in the number of security incidents on nuclear infrastructures. In fact, while in the 90s, we were witnessing a frequency of one attack every 2 years, we have gone to a frequency of more than one attack every year over the last 20 years. So it means a twofold increase, in fact, as you can see on the diagram on this slide. Furthermore, this estimate does not consider attacks on which the victims did not communicate. This increase, in fact, in the volume of threat in the nuclear segment is not related to a change in its status. In fact, as we said during the first webinar, this is the cyber threat that has evolved. The quality of attack infrastructures and modus operandi has increased along with the number of new high-level attackers, particularly in the cybercriminal and strategic espionage spheres. But the question is, why does this threat increasingly decided to target nuclear segment? Firstly, there is a pragmatic reason. Obviously, the increase in technical, tactical, and strategic skills has opened up new threat horizons. Then we have historical reasons. So, for instance, some landmark attacks, such as the Stuxnet attack on the Natanz nuclear facility, have shown that a successful attack on this type of infrastructures can provide a decisive strategic advantage. And finally, there is a cultural lever. So the multiplication of targeted espionage campaigns, as you can see on the timeline, denote a psychological paradigm shift. In fact, strategic and or industrial espionage against third country energy infrastructures has become a tacitly considered practice to pursue one's interest. Let us now look at the nature of the systems targeted by these cyber attackers. When we look at the architecture of nuclear power plant, we can easily distinguish several layers. On the Purdue model diagram that you have here, the layer 4-5 is typically the IT network where the primary business functions occurs. This layer is increasingly separated by DMZ, or demilitarized zone, that includes security systems such as firewalls, proxies, and is supposed to separate or partition the IT and operational worlds. Then we have the OT part, so with level 3, which corresponds to the manufacturing operation systems. Here, customized systems based on operating systems, such as Windows, for instance, are used to perform batch management, record data, and manage plant operations and performance. On level 2, we have the control systems, so supervisory control and data acquisition, so SCADA software is used to supervise, to monitor, and to control physical processes. And SCADA can manage, in fact, systems over long distances from the physical location of the plants, while DCS, so distributed control system, and programmable logic controllers, so PLC, are usually deployed in the plant in level 1. And finally, of course, we have the level 0 that corresponds to the physical processes. So the cyber threats observed in nuclear power plants mainly try to reach components in level 3 to 1, so the OT environment. If we now look at the modus operandi and the cyber kill chain that is specific to the segment, we see that step 1 of the kill chain is like the traditional kill chain, in that the goals are the same, namely to gain access to information, to defeat existing defensive measures, to gain access to protected network segments, to exfiltrate data, and to maintain, of course, undetectable access to infected systems. In step 2, the attacker uses the information obtained in step 1 to develop, to test, and to execute the attack. In fact, often the adversary fails in step 1 due to the sensitive nature of the equipment connected to the network, which leads in fact to unexpected results for him. But state-sponsored attackers can reach stage 2 as in fact they can often have access to a test network in their own country or exfiltrate specific information to successfully develop functional malware. Now let's have a look at the use case itself. First, some background. We're talking about Kudamkulam nuclear power plant. Kudamkulam is India's largest nuclear power plant, equipped with 2 reactors with the capacity of 1,000 megawatts each, and the 2 reactor units supplies power to the South Indian power grid. The plant will add in the future 4 more reactors to generate over 47.4 billion kilowatt hour per year, which represents, in fact, the consumption of more than 10 million Indians. What is important to understand here about this attack is that India has been pursuing advanced basic and applied research on thorium reactor technology for years. The reason for this is quite simple. The country has large reserves, uranium resources are running out and the price is rising, and some of the country's scientists, such as Anil Kakodkar, that you have on this slide, are among the world's leading specialists in this technology. So while the Kudamkulam nuclear power plant does not itself produce energy from thorium, Anil Kakodkar is conducting research on the topic, and the scientist was still, in fact, using the official email address of the BARC at the time of the attack and had access to the system's plans. So it seemed that the attackers were looking for and exfiltrated information about thorium technology and plant processes. Now that we have the contextual elements around the target, let's have a look at what happened from the outside, step by step, to understand this attack. So, Pukrush Singh, that is, a former researcher at India National Technical Research Organization, and who is now working at BAE Systems, was the first to alert the authorities on September 3. On September 4, so 2019, the Indian CERT notified on D-track malware infection on the plant. 3 days later, Pukrush Singh published a tweet in which he explained that he had recently seen a casus belli, so a specific act that could motivate a war in Indian cyberspace. For the record, the attack on or takeover of energy infrastructure is considered as an act of war under international law. In an interview with Hindustan Times in November 2019, the analyst explained that he had a disclosure on social media on October 28 that you have on this slide. And he said that technical indicators of the attack started trickling out to the wider cybersecurity community. And at that point, he said, it appeared that the infection was still widespread, nearly 2 months after the notification. It was not, in fact, until the day after this tweet that the plant authorities reacted. Initially, KNPP officials denied on October 29 that they had been the victims of a malware infection and issued a statement calling the tweets false information and claiming that a cyber attack on nuclear power plant was not possible. However, within 24 hours, KNPP parent company, so the NPCIL, admitted the security breach in a separate statement. So even before we address the question of the course of the attack itself, we can see a major problem on the risk management side. It took almost 2 months for the authorities to communicate about the incident and explain that the attack was impossible. This statement suggests, firstly, that at the time of the statement, maybe few specific measures were probably in place. And secondly, we see that here the manifestation of this kind of illusion that a nuclear power plant cannot be attacked. As I explained during the first webinar, an information system is above all a system of interactions, and even if it is secured, so what seems unlikely is not impossible. And often this is this kind of inappropriate cognitive posture that can give an attacker a decisive advantage. Now let's have a look to the attack itself, how it has been carried out. The attack on the plant was complex in that it involved reconnaissance tactics, very precise targeting to deploy the initial intrusion vector, meticulous work on the decoys used, and the deployment of a modular malware that has multiple capabilities to support the attacker's modus operandi. So it has been widely explained that the attacker behind the compromise is the Lazarus group, suspected of being sponsored by North Korea. However, it seems that two separate groups were at work here. First, following the kill chain, we have the group ATK-72, also known as Kimsuki. This group is far from being a novice in the field of attacks against nuclear segments. In 2014, it had already attacked Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Co. Limited for espionage purposes. So, first, this group carried out a massive reconnaissance phase, lasting almost a year, during which it tried, in fact, to identify people of interest working for the BERC and the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. In addition to this identification of individuals, this phase makes it possible to define the psychological profile of the targets to create adequate decoys. And this is this preparation, this meticulous preparation of this social engineering phase that was crucial because it allows the attacker to adapt its malicious approach and to ensure that attack runs smoothly. In a second phase, and thanks to the information he had gathered, ATK-72 launched a spear phishing campaign with highly specialized lures to catch the eyes of the targets. And here we find Anil Kakotkar and his colleague Bharadwaj, who is another great specialist in thorium technology. Mails are sent to both of them on their professional and personal email addresses. Then the two targets, so these two people, clicked on a link in the phishing email while using the domain of the plant, which allowed the deployment of malware to open and maintain access to the plant systems. Attackers were able to do this because they knew the internal IP address of the plant from the reconnaissance phase and the spying, in fact, on the two scientists' computers. In the fourth phase, once the access was opened and made permanent, ATK-72 transmitted all the useful information to another group, ATK-3 or APT-38, which can indeed be related to the Lazarus group. This group is also extremely sophisticated, and his technical level has allowed him to develop several malware, and in particular DTrack. And finally, thanks to the information shared by ATK-72 and the accesses that he maintained, ATK-3 was able to deploy the DTrack malware in the IT part of the plant's network. What we understand here with this process is that the modus operandi was prepared and planned at length with the cooperation of two groups specialized in the set of specific tasks. And it should also be noted that in this specific attack, only the IT part was affected by the compromise. In this sense, if you remember what we explained earlier, the OT level was not directly concerned, which can seem unusual. However, the attacker exfiltrated sensitive data related to the plant's technology and developments. But now let's have a look at what the malware did inside the system after HK3 dropped it. In fact, DTrack is categorized as a Trojan and/or a spyware according to various sources. In reality, it is a highly modular piece of malware capable of performing multiple distinct tasks. In this case, once inserted into the plant systems by HK3, the sample searches for information in two specific drives. You have on the slide drive C and E, indicating that the attacker had prior knowledge of the system structures, thanks to the information gathered by Kim-Soo-Ki. It looks for different software it is interested in and for browser information. All the collected data and information is recorded and organized and can be easily read by the attacker. And the name given to the file is, in fact, the IP address of the system. Once all the information is collected, DTrack compresses the folder into a zip file using a password retrieved by Kim-Soo-Ki during the reconnaissance phase. It will then send it to the attacker's server, and eventually the file is deleted, but not before it is copied to a better hidden directory. And when we look at this modus operandi, we see that this is an espionage campaign. But it was found that various capabilities, such as command and control, can be added to the sample to turn it into a weapon. So, as can be seen from DTrack's operations, the malware here was used solely as said for industrial espionage on the plant. Nevertheless, this attack could have been much more serious given the capability and background of the attackers. Now, let's have a look to DTrack's environment. As mentioned on the slide, the real issue in this use case is not how the attacker used DTrack, but rather what he could have done with a different motivation. As we can see, the attacker did not intend to sabotage or destroy the infrastructure. However, considering the time between the Indian National Cert alert and the full awareness of the attack's reality by the authorities, and also considering the capabilities deployed in the past by this attacker, a sabotage attempt would have had a great chance of success. The time the attacker was able to spend in the plant system without encountering any hindrance could have been dramatic, since DTrack can drop all the malware. Furthermore, the cooperation of several groups, as in this case, could have led to the downloading of all the malware and the recovery of all the information to carry out a more damaging attack. As can be seen on the slide, ADK3 or APT38 has a diverse and extensive arsenal. This arsenal gathers backdoor, launcher, downloader, and credential stealers, which allow to root, to hide, and to move inside the target system. And in addition to these malwares, the attacker has whippers, so malware dedicated to sabotage and or to destruction. By way of conclusion, let us recall some essential elements. Firstly, the reaction time of the authorities and the claim that an attack was impossible denotes a dangerous posture in terms of cyber defense. Remember that what is unthinkable is not what is impossible, but what hasn't yet been imagined. Secondly, two different actors were at work here, with a well-constructed strategy, meticulous preparation, and a clear goal. So large attacker groups are not fixed programs. They are able to adapt and learn from your cyber defense policies. Also, as we said at the beginning, Attackers targeting nuclear power plants often aim to reach the OT layer of their target. However, as we've seen, this is not a systematic pattern. A nuclear power plant contains sensitive information in its IT space, and this information may be of interest for attackers. And finally, remember once again that all information system is a system of permanent interactions. And in that way, an information system is plastic, is flexible. System partitioning, demilitarized zones, user access and credential management must be checked regularly and combined with an integrated cyber defense strategy that considers the human factor to prevent social engineering techniques. So the goal of Thales CTI is precisely to provide a detailed knowledge and comprehension of this cyber threat complexity by understanding the context, the modus operandi, technical elements, and background of the attacker groups to provide, in fact, rational solutions in the form of reports, advice, and detection rules to quickly implement good practices for an adequate and effective cyber defense. Now let's have a look to a more widely vision of cyber defense to complete the CTI approach. Here are the action carried out by the joint work of Thales and GE, and I will let Timo explain you exactly what it is.
Thank you very much, Nicolas, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
So what can we learn from this? So here on the page, a few summaries of the main takeaways for everybody listening into. I think the biggest one that we all can learn from it, an air gap, or so a system that is not connected to the internet and has no internet connection, is not a sufficient cyber protection. Well, an air gap of itself is a part of a cyber protection and can still be used, but it is not sufficient as it can be breached. So air gaps are typically, we live in a world of illusion that an air gap provides enough security, and we have a lot of cases that demonstrates the air gap can be breached via a USB key, via a phishing attempt on somebody's bringing in a computer to the side, or either it could be an official or a service employee that unfortunately already has an infiltrated computer. So what you really need to protect yourself against air gap or against cyber threat in generally is a defense and death strategy. We have developed a defense and death strategy contextualized for the nuclear applications, and I will go through that in the next page a little bit more in depth what it means. Second thing, a key takeaway is once your system is breached, you need some monitoring and detection capabilities to avoid the attacker moving through your system and to make countermeasures. So intrusion detection, alarm management is key. And for that, we have intrusion detection systems, CM or CSOC solutions, which are event management systems to showcase all alarms, bringing up alarms, or having even remote teams screening alarms and monitoring and reacting towards them. Third thing, training and awareness. The human factor is maybe the most crucial one when it comes to cybersecurity. While you can have the strongest lock at the door, if somebody's opening the door for you, you are infiltrated. So it doesn't help you. So your people needs to be aware and trained around cybersecurity is the major key factor for success, or is maybe the first and most important defense layers that you need to build. We have developed with Thales here a training program that helps operators as well as managers to have the right measures in place. The last things, OT systems are highly vulnerable. There are specific risks, specific vulnerabilities within OT systems, and it requires a specific assessment and knowledge around these tools to develop right countermeasures. As I highlighted before, defense in depth is the answer to most cybersecurity questions. So quickly, a recap around defense in depth. Defense in depth is building a defensive structure around the protected asset with more than one defensive layers. So if one of these layers is failing, another complementary layer will jump in and protect your asset. So for example, the human factor, as seen in the example, is the number one security layer. So if the Indian gentleman would not have pressed on the link, no connection would have established and no infiltration with D-Track would have happened in Kudankulam. So if the human would have been trained correctly, that could have been avoided. But if it still would have happened, if the attack happened, you need protective layer within your system to help you stopping the malware to infiltrate or to navigate. That can happen through network systems, like for network segmentation, firewalls, DMZs, demilitarized zones, so that the attacker can't move or the malware can't move through your system properly. Then you will work on your platform. The platform could be an antivirus on Windows or anyway Windows hardening system, or bringing all your system to the latest security patches. So ensuring that your system has no open backdoors or no open vulnerable pieces that can be exploited. Afterwards, the application itself, so it needs to be securely coded. The data needs to be encrypted, or that there is no way of sniffing or having man-in-the-middle attacks on your data sets, and that you're having response technologies in place, like highlighted before, intrusion detection system that allows you to find some abnormalities in the system, that allows you to see that there is somebody potentially within your system trying to do or install himself or herself in some backdoor or some techniques. And that you're having also response technologies for backing up in case an attack has happened or a bad thing has happened, so that you have a response plan in place. I hope you enjoy this, short but quite detailed background information around an attack in the nuclear space. I hope you could take something from that for your own purposes. And if you like to have more information, more things, we having a threat intelligence report written by Thales and GE that you can download, where you get more insights, a bigger macro view around the threat landscape in the energy sector. Or you are welcome as well to visit us at ge.com to get our latest nuclear white paper around nuclear energy production going forward, as well as our cybersecurity offering and brochure that can be downloaded there. With that, we are reaching the end of the webinar, and I'm now taking the time for answering the Q&A and going into the questions that arise. So maybe we start with the top.
Yes, this is a question for me, I think. So how is Thales Threat Intelligence Cell getting more information around this attack?